What's going on, everyone? Axelbeats here for AnimeUproar, and today we are diving into the Demon Slayer story to talk all about the shape-shifting Demon King of Pop's many different forms. There's quite a few of them, and definitely some come across as much cooler than others, but we're going to be talking about every single one of them here. If you enjoy these closer looks at Demon Slayer characters, as well as their forms and stories, remember to hit that like button and let us know you want to see more. And you can also subscribe to the channel if you're new so that you don't miss any future Demon Slayer videos. If you're looking for videos similar to this one after, you can also check out our video on all of Tanjiro's forms from the other day, or my own video on character design in Demon Slayer over on my own channel. With all of that being said though, this intro has gone on long enough, so let's get into it, spoilers and all. Muzan, being the immortal shape-shifting demon he is, tends to change his appearance at the drop of a hat. However, he obviously didn't start as this monstrous powerhouse. Rather, Muzan's first form was human, and his story begins as meekly as possible. We don't really know the exact year that he was born, but we do know that it takes place in the Heian period about 1,000 years ago. And during this period, Muzan was already struggling for life even before he was born. His heart had stopped several times while in utero, and by the time he was actually born, he was pronounced stillborn. His body would be taken to be cremated, but moments before being turned to ash, Muzan's heart began again, and he let out his first cry. However, even after defying death so many times, his survival would not be assured, and most of his human life was spent riddled with illness. And perhaps, naturally for someone in his position, he developed a severe fear of both illness and of death. Unfortunately for him though, he would be diagnosed with a disease that would ultimately lead to his death before he even reached 20. Something which is pretty interesting to note when you consider that the Demon Slayers who would take him down would mostly awaken their Demon Slayer marks and die before reaching 25. Back to Muzan though, not all was hopeless. A doctor suggested there might be something he could do and began testing experimental new medicine on him. Muzan became enraged when he saw no progress though, and killed the doctor thinking that the medicine had been a failure. But in reality it had worked. Muzan's body became powerful, but at the cost of him needing to eat human flesh in order to survive. Something he was more than willing to do. And this brings us to Muzan's second form and the start of his demon life. Before we get into that though, we do learn that Muzan becoming a demon was the trigger for the Ubuyashiki family to becoming cursed and to be as frail and ill as he was, each member being destined to die young and have their bodies become more and more weak as they age. In trying to escape his own fate, we see him passing his maladies on to the future generations, running from his own problems only to make them other people's down the line. And this method of passing the buck on to other people, or of putting himself in good situations at the cost of other people's lives, is something we see being followed through thematically for the entirety of his time as a demon. As a demon, Muzan needed to stay out of the sunlight or he would be instantly burned away. The sun would become a reminder of escaping cremation as an infant. To overcome this, Muzan would have two options. Firstly, he could find the blue spider lily. This would be the final part of his treatment that the doctor would have given him had he not been killed, but now it was out of his reach as it only bloomed during the daytime for a few days of the year, making it something that both he and demons under him would never be able to attain. His second option is that he could absorb another demon who was immune to sunlight, like Nezuko would eventually be revealed to be. To attain these goals, Muzan would go on to create hundreds of other demons in hope of either creating this sun-immune demon, or that one of them might find the spider lily for him. Again, Muzan only has to eat people, he doesn't have to turn them into demons, but he's willing to ruin their lives and corrupt them to make his own life better. On top of this, we almost never see Muzan searching for the blue spider lily himself. Instead, he will tend to use other demons to solve his problems for him, just as he pushed his problems onto the Ubuyashiki clan. And while we're on the subject of the blue spider lily, just a quick side note here. The blue spider lily is a purely mythical flower, but the red spider lily is both very real and extremely prominent in Japanese mythos. Specifically, it grows along the Sanzu River and is meant to guide the dead towards their reincarnation and their next lives. We even see it showing up when Zenitsu defeats Kaigaku, and then sees Jigoro at the border between the living and the dead. So, if the red spider lily is a symbol of accepting your own death and moving on to the next life, then the blue spider lily could be a symbol of avoiding death and clinging to life. Just a cool bit of symbolism that I wanted to include here. While becoming accustomed to this new demon body, Muzan gained incredible confidence in himself. As long as he stayed out of the sun, he was untouchable, and no human could ever oppose him. He was finally free from his fear of death. At least, that's how it seemed. Eventually, though, he crossed paths with Yoriichi, the first Breath of the Sun user. And while Muzan had come across several demon slayers in the past, none of them were a real threat. He challenged Yoriichi, smugly thinking that it would be an easy match, but Yoriichi quickly overpowered him, bringing him down and backing him into a wall until Muzan was forced to blow himself up, scattering his body into hundreds of pieces. But even so, Yoriichi managed to destroy even these fragments, missing only a very small portion of them. But even this was enough for Muzan to regenerate from. Despite making it out alive, Muzan would spend the rest of Yoriichi's life hiding himself away, and began working from the shadows and having other demons act in his stead to avoid putting his own life in danger, just in case another Yoriichi would ever show up. Anyways, Muzan takes on several different forms throughout his life as a demon. However, it seems like he does prefer his normal adult male form, as he always comes back to it, and anytime we see him in the past, he is always in this form. This is the form that we see him in when he first meets Tanjiro, the King of Pop form, if you will, which looks like a 20 to 30-year-old man. Again, we see him looking like this when he first meets Akaza, when he first meets Kokushibo, and when he battled with Yoriichi in just about every flashback any demons have of him, and permanently after the Entertainment District arc until he goes for a more large-scale transformation. It seems to be his go-to form. And as we see in each of his forms, Muzan's body is always meant to make the most of each situation that he finds himself in to get the biggest benefit or to hold the highest status. The King of Pop form even sees him having a human family, which allows him to blend into his environment and keep him from being targeted by demon slayers. As they say, the best place to hide is often in plain sight. We also see him taking this form when visiting Daki, and it's hard to tell if Daki is just filled with adoration for Muzan in general, or if she's extremely attracted to him. But one of these is definitely true, and while we do see many demons sucking up to him throughout the series, it's typically out of fear of being killed, and rarely do we see them making this kind of face. Of course, while Muzan is physically strong, he still has a very sickly white tone to him. We see someone commenting on this after he meets Tanjiro, and Muzan killing that person as a result. While he is effectively healthy now, he is still drastically fearful of death and of illness, and he hates to be associated with either of those traits, which leads us into his next actual appearance in the series and his next form. While we do see Muzan in a few memories or flashbacks after this point, he doesn't actually appear in the flesh until after Rui's death, where he gathers all the remaining lower moons together to be slaughtered. Here he appears in his Milfzan form. He's not in this for very long, so there isn't much to actually talk about in terms of what he does, but I do at least have an idea of why this form was selected. We know that this isn't a very common form for Muzan, as even the lower moons initially don't recognize him, and we know that there's always a purpose behind his actions. So, what was the purpose behind becoming a woman? Well, as I mentioned, this is his next appearance in the series after being called very pale and freaking out about it. And while a man being pale in Japan might be a sign of either weakness or illness, for a woman, pale skin was considered to be very beautiful, specifically something which picked up in popularity in the Heian period, which again, Muzan was born in. So I believe that to avoid looking weak and to fit what his version of an ideal person might be at the time, as well as to soothe his insecurities, he decided to be a woman here. After this, we see Muzan taking the form of a young child, as Muzan has always seemed to have a pretty significant lust for knowledge because he wants to find a cure for his sun weakness. He appears to be a prodigy as a child. This does a few things for him. Firstly, it strokes his ego. He's still not mentally at 100%, he's having a rough time of things, and constantly being called a genius will do a lot for a guy. Secondly, it allows him to be adopted by an affluent family, which gave him high social standing, as well as access to both comfortable living and any excess money he might need. Finally, being a child has some level of innate security for him, because 1, it's pretty good camouflage, and 2, if he was ever to be attacked, everyone around him would likely step in to protect him, and saying, "that kid is a demon," probably wouldn't get a demon slayer very far with the public. Again, this form is just another way for Muzan to take advantage of those around him and put himself in the most advantageous position possible. As soon as he's set up with the time and resources that he needed, he reverts back to his normal form for the rest of the series. That is, until the final battle. Muzan arrives to kill Oyakata, but he's lured into a trap in doing so. The mansion explodes, injuring Muzan and scaring him quite a bit, but he's able to relax himself knowing he'll be able to recover over time. However, as he regains his calm, Tamayo pierces him with a series of blood demon spikes and immobilizes him before plunging her fist and the drug she made for him into his stomach, warning him that this drug would eventually turn him human. The Slayers arrive to finish him off, but everyone is brought into the Infinity Castle, and Muzan is instead given time to recover. He wraps himself up in a cocoon-like structure within the castle, where he can buy his time, and when he emerges, he is in a totally different form. He has long white hair, demonic mouths all over his body, and tendril-like whips coming out of his back, which is decidedly less human-looking. In this form, he easily takes care of all the lower-ranked demon slayers in the area, killing and devouring them to heal himself before finally finishing off Tamayo. Then the real battle begins. The Hashira, Tanjiro, Kanao, Genya, Zenitsu, and Inosuke just finished off all of the remaining upper moons, but not without heavy losses. Genya, Shinobu, and Muichiro have all died, and those who are alive are looking far worse for wear. Slowly, the remaining demon slayers arrive to the battlefield, and Muzan is demolishing them, even taking one of Tanjiro's eyes before poisoning him and leaving him unconscious. It isn't just Tanjiro though, he is swatting off the other demon slayers like they are less than flies. Once all of the demon slayers have assembled, the group manages to push back here and there, but ultimately it comes down to him being an immortal and having infinite chances to strike back, while the demon slayers can barely afford to be hit once without risking terrible poisoning or worse. And on top of this, they have to hold him off until sunrise, so things are looking pretty bleak. However, Tanjiro wakes up here and makes his way back onto the battlefield, having just peered into ancestral memories and learning the secrets of the 13th form of sun breathing. With this at his disposal, he can fight back, but it takes all he can do just to keep breathing while he performs his attack. Muzan begins recognizing that Tanjiro is a threat, but says he is nothing compared to Yoriichi. But even so, Muzan is struggling for some reason. Panicking, he looks back into Tamayo's memories to see what else the drug might have done. Not only was the drug meant to turn him human, but it was also causing him to age extremely fast. And over the course of the battle, he had already aged 9,000 years. Which is why his hair hadn't returned to being black. He was slowing down, and that's why the Slayers were starting to get the upper hand. We learn later that the drug also prevents him from bursting into thousands of fragments and escaping that way as well. And with all of those parts in play, the Slayers can begin their counterattack. Scars begin emerging all over Muzan's body as it can't keep up with its rapid regeneration, and they reveal where Yoriichi cut him years and years ago. This shows the Demon Slayers where Muzan's vital organs were, and marks the weak points for them to attack with their red blades. Ultimately, through a massive group effort, the odds fall in the Demon Slayer's hands, and they manage to corner Muzan as the sun rises. In one final gambit, Muzan creates a shell of flesh in the form of a giant baby around his body, in hopes of protecting himself from the sun long enough for him to escape, but it's no use. The Demon Slayers manage to hold him down, and finally, he is defeated. Now, it's a pretty direct parallel, but I know that a lot of people really don't like the demon baby form so much, so I'm going to explain it anyways. Muzan was a coward who relied on others for protection. He was nothing more than a giant baby the entire series, who would put up walls and facades to hide himself away. While yes, it does look admittedly lame as hell, it's also incredibly fitting for a monster who avoided cremation as a stillborn to be burnt up in the sun as he revealed himself to still be that baby. Now, that said, Muzan's story technically doesn't end there. The poison he left within Tanjiro actually had a small bit of himself within it. Just enough to cling on to the living cells left within Tanjiro's body, and bring him back to life as the inheritor of Muzan's will in the ultimate demon form. But while his will is being passed on, this isn't technically Muzan himself. So if you want to learn more about that form, you'll have to check out our video all about Tanjiro's forms after this one. Muzan really is an interesting demon. He's this cowardly mastermind pulling the strings of others on his own quest for immortality. Despite that, he has this overwhelming presence when he actually shows up. It kind of feels like you have this Superman-esque figure with next to no weaknesses and incredible power, but even so, he's still terrified at every corner. It's a pretty unique duality, and whether or not it works is kind of up for debate. But at the very least, I think it makes for a good discussion piece. So let me know what you think about him down in the comments. Do you like Muzan? Do you dislike Muzan? Did you find yourself oddly attracted to MILFzan? I want to know everything you have to say down below. For now though, if you enjoyed this video and you want to see more Demon Slayer content, remember to leave a like to let us know. And if you're new to AnimeUproar or you just want to stay up to date with all of our videos, be sure to hit that subscribe button and ring the bell to select all notifications. Finally, you can also follow us over on Twitter and Instagram at AnimeUproar, or you can follow myself at ExcellianYT. With all that being said though, I hope you enjoyed this deep dive into Muzan's forms, and until next time, remember to stay excellent.